Hello, my name is Adlil Khaliq and I'm from FCN1 and I'm going to answer question 1, which is what is Asia for Asian? Now, Asia for Asian is the propaganda that the Japanese use for to win the support of local Malays, and it helped the Japanese to convince the local population that they were the actual saviors of Malays, while Britain was portrayed as an imperial force that wished to exploit Malaysia's resources. They also say that they wanted to make a better Asia for all Asians, and on top of that, they wanted to be the leader of this new organization. And that is all.
Alright, hello, my name is Amin. I'm from FCI 1. So I am assigned to do this blended learning. I have chosen question number 2 for the blended learning assignment, which is explain the independence movement explained by Insun Mustafa, the daughter of Mustafa Hussein, who was interviewed in the YouTube video. Alright, Insun Mustafa, or widely known as Mustafa Hussein, was a KMM vice president before the World War II. So, brief intro of the KM, also known as Young Malays Union. They're the first leftist and national political establishment in British Malaya. So they're like an established nationalist group during the British Malaya, and also during the Japanese invasion. So explaining the independence movement, when the Japanese invasion commenced from the Northern Peninsula until Kuala Lumpur, Insun Mustafa saw an opportunity that he can demand independence from the Japanese government. But at the time, the commander of the Japanese army stated that they are not to build a prosperous nation, but to just plunder resources and build a propaganda saying that the Asian countries are only for Asians, not for Europeans or other invaders. So, but the KMM still supported the Japanese propaganda nationalist idea, so they gave additional manpower towards the Japanese army to march forward towards Singapore. It took 2 months to do that, and after that, on the 15th February of 42, Arthur Percival, at that time was the British commander who's overseeing the Malaya, surrenders. And also after that, Winston Churchill, currently at that time was the Prime Minister of Britain, stated that it was the worst disaster in British history, because when the Japanese invaded from the Northern Peninsula, all the Europeans there living, the British, they just left us, and so it was kind of considered the worst disaster. So after a while, the KMM still supports the nationalist propaganda from the Japanese army. So during a few days before the atomic bombs dropped, Ibrahim Yaakob, at that time was the president of the KMM, and also Insun Mustafa decided to do a meeting with the Japanese army to claim independence. So they decided to make a congress in the middle of Kuala Lumpur, but 40 hours before Insun Mustafa and Ibrahim Yaakob had to wait 40 hours to declare independence for Malaya. But unfortunate events happened. The Americans at that time also decided to drop 2 atomic bombs, which is the Fat Boy and it's called the Fat Boy and the Big Boy, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They dropped it at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the Japanese invaders decided to surrender, and so they left Malaya, leaving at that time Malaya empty-handed with no leaders. So the KMM decided to take over at that time, and civil war erupted. So they tried to snuffle out all the Japanese spies who were Malayans who were supporting the Japanese by being spies for them in certain villages, and they construct this method of the voice of the people. So when a person gets arrested, so it's not the judge who decides the fate or whether the arrested, the suspect, dies or not. It's the voice of the people. So the judge would ask like, so nak buat apa ni? The people would say like, kill them, execute them. So that's what it usually happens after during the KMM decided to take over Malaya. And that's just additional context for my question. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emanuel and I am from FCI 2 and I'll be answering question number 3, which is what is the Subchain campaign, and give 2 examples based on the video. So the Subchain campaign is basically purification by cleansing, which is basically killing all the Chinese people in Malaya, because in 1937 the Japanese was at war with China, vice versa, and so they know the Chinese people in Malaysia are still loyal to their mainland. So there are 2 examples. Number 1, which is they will put up screening centers and they would ask all the Chinese people aged from 15 to 50 to go to this screening center, and basically they would have a snitch, informant. They would put a bag so they wouldn't know who is the informant, and that informant will snitch on their own people, and those who are clear are set to go, and those who are not against the Japanese will be killed on the spot. And the second example is when they went to a village and they asked all the Chinese people to come out, and just because they want to give them free rice, but in reality they were actually luring them out so to test their loyalty, and those who were not loyal were stabbed and killed on the spot in the jungle.
Hi, my name is Pavithran and I'm from FCI 1, and I'll be doing question number 4, which is a 2-parter, which number 1 says what is session. Session is a Japanese word which is translated, if it's translated into English, which means spirit, and that means a spirit within one person on how he does something, whether he has a spirit to do it or not. And the second question is give 2 examples which is implemented session in the video. The first example is that the soldiers pushed through the south relentlessly on their bicycle for 24 hours straight without any breaks. And the second example is where that the Japanese army and government implemented that the Malaysian people learn their language, and they learn discipline, punctuality, and that they also worship the Japanese emperor. That's all. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Nishanth and I'm from FCI 1, and the question I'll be answering is question 5. And for my answer is Muhammad Saleh was working at a small shop in Johor when he was persuaded to take a mysterious job in Thailand. He was told that he would be working in a town in Siam where plenty of food will be provided. When he was there, however, he was only given a few grains of rice and was a slave to the Japanese, where he worked in the infamous Death Railway, working day and night building the track. There were a mixture of race building the road, which includes Malays, Chinese and Indians. There were also white men there working, only wearing their underpants because they didn't have any clothes. It was overall a bad experience as they were slaves and forced to build the railways endlessly no matter the weather, with minimal food. According to him, 40 to 20 men were dying every day building the railways and were buried next to the track by digging a big pit. and throwing the bodies in. The 24 men who were persuaded to work from his town only returned with 4 men left. It was said that over half of the men that built the railway had died doing so.